Hi everyone, David Francoeur here with your digital workplace updates video. We're just going to hop into some of the latest from Microsoft 365.
Lead is a remote-first company based out of Canada.
What makes a world-class Microsoft 365 intranet and digital workplace?
One of the first things that will be of interest to a lot of people that especially are trying to create some repeatability in their digital workplace is the new list templating. Now, this has been around for a while, but the ability to actually insert these new corporate or departmental level list templates will help with repeatability, but also make it a little bit more accessible. Previously, this was all done via site scripts and site designs, and while this still relies on that same back end, we can now surface it to our users in a much more user-friendly way in this what I would call list template catalogs here. So this is something exciting and something that a lot of groups are going to start to want to jump on. Now, moving on from that right into Teams, really nice little feature is being able to see some chat bubbles, which is not a new design pattern by any means, and it's a nice welcome one from Teams. Now, I would argue it doesn't help with long messages as much, but when you're getting a very brief feedback, like people can hear you, or greetings, or people dropping off calls, it can be really useful to not have to change your context. Switch open the message pane, take up some real estate on your screen, and instead just see it as a kind of momentary flyout. Keeping with the theme of Teams, we're starting to see the rollout now of an improved Teams attendance tab, and this is going to roll into the Teams meeting after a meeting is complete. We're going to be able to see better details around attendance. So if you've ever scratched your head trying to figure out who was attending certain meetings, or even tracking if someone may have been around during a very critical time of the meeting, we should be able to see all of this type of information in the attendance tab going forward. So if you're not seeing this, make sure you first have it enabled, and then from there you could see this between now and the end of July. We have the ability now to lower all hands, and if you've been on one of these calls where people are starting to use this feature but not always being diligent about lowering their hands, remembering sometimes it's just a very innocent mistake, it's nice to be able to reset this as a presenter, just to make sure that as you're moving from one topic to the next, you don't have this like leftover bunch of hands raised and you're then prompting people for questions that may or may not actually exist anymore. So it's a really good way to just kind of reset, blank slate as you move from topic to topic in a presentation. Viva Learning is moving into public preview. We are seeing this rolling out into tenants as we speak, and some great initial integrations with some of the leaders in the space. So we see things like LinkedIn Learning here. So really excited to see some of these things live in environments. We've been excited about Viva for a while, and Learning has been one that really piqued our attention. In terms of changes for administrators, who we always want to make sure they see some love as well, one of the things that has been somewhat lacking up until recently is the admin experience for seeing the list of SharePoint sites. Now, we've had that list in place in a modern view in the admin panel for a while. There's some critical information that's been missing, and some of that includes things like where was this object created? This has been the bane for a lot of administrators trying to track down how things have been created and how to manage that sprawl. And we're now getting better visibility into that with a nice column that tells us where was this created. So was this created from SharePoint, the start page, within a Microsoft Teams interface, or even via PNP provisioning as an example here. So this will give us a lot more visibility and I think better ability to track and audit how things are being created. I also like this column here that's just a very simple column with an icon callout and identifying which sites have a team attached to it. This can be a really good way to track which sites may not have a team and you may want to add one to, or just validating that one already exists and is attached to the right site. Admin experiences continue to evolve also on the dashboarding side. We're starting to see more and more widgets available, so that gives administrators more and more configurability and power in monitoring what they really care about. On the collaboration side, potentially minor, but also very valuable addition here has been something in the lists. And in the lists, we've been able to provide comments in line with list items, which has been tremendously helpful, at least in our organization, for using lists in a more collaborative fashion. but we did not have the ability to @mention people. And that was always a bit of a gap when we wanted to kind of provide a call to action or a reminder for someone. And this is now available. So we should start to see this rolling out. The only gap I'm still seeing today is this doesn't work for external users. So if you're collaborating in your tenant with guest users, you won't be able to currently @mention those users, but you will be able to, however, call out people within your organization that have licenses. So keep that in mind, and hopefully in the future we'll see that parity across guest users as well. Viva Insights, seeing a lot of attention obviously on Viva, and we'll talk a little bit more about this down further in the update, especially with stuff from Inspire. Insights has announced the already teased integration with Headspace, and we're starting to see this in live environments today. So really exciting to see that kind of coming to fruition, the ability to make sure that well-being and employee kind of mental states are being acknowledged as something that needs attention, right? And Headspace is a leader here, and it's great to see that integration and letting people have an outlet for disconnecting when they need to. We've seen a lot of attention and improvements on the accessibility side. We've seen things like better reading experiences within SharePoint. That Immersive Reader is rolling out not only to SharePoint, but also to OneDrive. So we see an experience here that is actually quite powerful. And in SharePoint, we see things that allow us to change the font size, obviously, but also even flag or highlight very important parts of speech. So any verbs, for example, that you want to call attention to. Minor change here on the page details pane, but really like seeing these little minor evolutionary changes. At the bottom of this little properties pane, we see the ability to delete a page, and it sounds like an obvious thing. And previously, we would always have to go and open our site pages in the site contents view to delete a page. This gives us a one-click shortcut to do that. If you're someone like me who's often experimenting with cloning pages, copying pages, you can find that this kind of critical mass of content, often which is throwaway in a one-time use, starts to clutter up your pages library. So having this more easily accessible should help with that workflow and keeping that a little bit more neat and tidy. Now, from Inspire, a few interesting callouts, and I think the first one is just around licensing and costing. I think there's been some feedback that licensing was a little bit confusing at times, trying to figure out what was free, what wasn't free, and for those things that did have a cost attached, what exactly were they? And I think we're seeing a streamlining here, and I think this is going to really benefit onboarding of users when we have just a standard number here of $4 US per Viva, other than connections, which we know now is free. So really excited to see that kind of thing. This makes our ability to communicate this more effective and a lot easier to kind of educate users on. One of the things that's furthest along, I think, in the Viva Connections kind of sphere right now is the dashboard web part, which I'm very excited about. I think it's an action-oriented web part that we're going to start to see become very prominent on intranet homepages, for one. And we see a few different examples here, very early adopters from ServiceNow, as well as Workday, for two of them here on the screen, where you're seeing the experience of moving from the dashboard card or the level 1 card and moving straight into kind of an action that you can perform in an app. So whether this be booking holidays, whether this be logging a request, or you see with MoveWorks, for example, I need help unlocking my laptop. So these are all really actionable and personalized action tiles that are going to become, I think, very important in the internet space going forward. I think last thing I would talk about in this video would just be around API timeframes. I think a lot of partners in the ecosystem have been really excited about a number of these Viva pieces, and rightly so. I think very interested in knowing when we can get our hands on the APIs so that we can start working with them ourselves. So we're starting to get a little bit of that information from Inspire, including connections, learning, and topics timelines. And right now, I think the Viva Connections one, like I said, is furthest along with the private preview for the API in progress as of today.